So we kind of got to this. We were talking about we went on a bit of a tangent, but we were talking about AI and kind of the future, the uncertainty of the
Yeah,
future.
yeah.
I remember I came to that thought because I'm going through a mobile marketing class where they're talking about cookies and different things on websites that track your different things that you look at that have your attention. They try to advertise to you specifically, right? And I was
Hmm.
thinking, they gave the example of different states presenting laws that protect people's private information, so it can't be sold to advertisers for use of advertising. And while it is very creepy, and I really don't like how like you can have a conversation and it seems like your phone's listening because it'll bring you an ad for what you just talked about,
Um,
or
yeah.
it gets into another step where you weren't even talking about it, but you were just thinking about something, and it gives you an ad for that. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's an algorithm that like kind of tracks what you do and your purchase habits and everything, and it kind of presents these ideas to you. And there is the feeling that it's creepy. You didn't authorize that, right? There's no reason it should be tracking that. But then there's also like I actually it works. It's effective. I buy more things that I'm seeing because I'm seeing cooler things that I'm more interested in. You know.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so and that kind of goes with the whole Wally thing. It's like all your needs are being met in that chair. You're connected, and it's just as far as the future that you want. It's just convenient, right? It's making things more convenient for you. But I don't know. Is it worth? I guess them listening to the conversations and stuff. Obviously, that shouldn't be happening. But yeah, it's just I do like being introduced to new different things that I'd like to see sometimes.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. You say that because I remember early on, people used to always tell me about that, and I always dismissed them as like conspiracy theorists and all that. It's like, ah, be quiet. The
Yeah.
government's listening, and Facebook wants to know what. But I think it was just a few years ago I had to come to the realization that this was actually happening.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I would open yeah, I would open my Instagram or Facebook, and a ministry that maybe I was looking up or even possibly thinking about, or I was playing on my YouTube on my PlayStation, you know, back all the way in Florida, like, they'd be, I would be keeping up with them, talking about them, or checking on what they're doing. And yeah, I would log into my Facebook or Instagram and see advertisement or some type of like reference to that specific ministry. And I kept thinking to
Yeah.
myself, like, I know Facebook is not like big on religion and Christianity, especially not in the Reform community, but it was like specifically for me, you know. And when it kept happening, I kept realizing, like, okay, I'm gonna have to come to the conclusion that obviously something's happening here, especially with my Google News. Like I don't know about you, but yeah, I go to my Google News and it's so fascinating how everything is Walking Dead, everything is Snyderverse, everything is like my me specifically,
Yeah.
and I'm like this, The Last of Us, it's always specifically to my taste. Resident Evil, you name it, or it might be what's happening with Russia and Ukraine. Like I'm keeping up with that, and it's always specifically tailored for my needs, and it's just it's wild. It's
Well,
wild. So
yeah, that's interesting. I'm doing a project with some friends, and we're talking about the recent Blizzard, Activision, the Microsoft acquisition of that company, and we were just talking about it and bringing up different articles, and then I get like throughout the week before our next meeting, it was like 2 days, and I literally got a notification, a Google whatever on my phone talking about a new article from them that came out, and I was like, that is hyper relevant. That's I should save that
right?
for our conversation later. Like, so it's like it helps, but it's like that's creepy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I mean, one thing I've kind of joked about is, because I have my sister, my older sister, she's really big on. I'm gonna
Oh,
say
my
like
my baby's crying.
she's big on like the conspiracy theorist thing. Like she embraces it. Like she doesn't see it as an insult.
Really?
You know. Yeah, yeah. She's really open to and sometimes she's joked with me that James, you got to be careful with the government because they're always listening to you and all that kind of stuff. And my response is typically, well, I hope so, and maybe they'll be saved by Christ. They'll be delivered by the gospel. I hope they'll get the gospel and the agents listen like, oh, like
Yeah, your FBI agent is like, this guy's spitting. He's just talking truth.
yeah, yeah. Like they're getting convicted. Like I want that. I would want that.
Did you guys hear about this Jesus guy? Oh my god.
I really take this religion thing seriously. But no, it is. I will say there may be times when I'm maybe looking up something that I don't know. I wouldn't prefer people to know that I'm working on or a project or whatever. And yeah, I don't want Google to recite to me what it is that I'm looking up. What projects I'm. I don't know. I may not want that to be out there, and so.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, yeah. So I would say it's creepy. It is. It is.
You know what's funny about the term conspiracy theory is that it was made up by the CIA back in like the 70s or the 60s or something, or I forget what time, but it was like literally that phrase was created by them and kind of implemented by them to kind of make everyone who disagrees with what's going on kind of seen as like a tinfoil hat person or someone who's crazy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and there are definitely conspiracy theories out there that are just far fetched and wild, and some of that
Oh
could
yeah.
be actually planted as like this is the conspiracy theory to distract from like the actual what's going on. I don't mean to get
Yeah.
too into it, but it's very, very interesting, looking into the stuff that other governments have done and secret organizations and everything, and our government especially with stuff that's been recently declassified. A lot to go
Hmm.
into there. And there's a lot that's still hidden, right? And I think one of the biggest fallacies we have is just assuming that this giant government corporation or whatever is going to have our best interests at heart. And I actually wrote a Twitter thread about this earlier this week, and I didn't mean to. I didn't mean I thought I knew it was a good topic, and I knew there's a lot I wanted to get into. I was going to write it later, but I ended up just like, let me get out this thought real quick. I was doing some homework for my econ class, and it was presenting the concept of like car insurance, and it was talking a lot about incentive based, you know, products and different businesses and stuff. And I forget what the term is called, but basically assuming that a person is going to act in their own self-interest, not just their self-interest, but doing what is best for them, right?
Okay.
So someone can act in their self-interest, but they might not choose what's best for them because they haven't thought about it enough. They don't know the strategy of what choice is best. But when you're in the
Hmm.
business world, you want to assume that every buyer and every other competitor is going to act in their best self-interest, and
Hmm.
that goes off what incentivizes them, right? And you can see this in a corporate pay structure, any kind of pay structure. If you're paying a manager some money and you're giving him a bonus based on how many sales he makes. I'm not sure if I talked to this about you before, but um, a manager how many sales he makes, and then he talks about or he will reach that quota of sales to get that bonus, but he could have done that by slashing prices, right? And then that doesn't equal the
Hmm.
profitability in the end, so you're still screwed.
Oh,
So
oh, yeah, yeah.
in that class, it was talking about making sure the incentives of the company are the same as the incentives of the employees and the managers. But what got kind of depressing a little bit to me is like realizing like what our whole structure here, not just in America but in general, like what are our incentives? And in a capitalist kind of society, it really incentivizes monetary gain and everything. And there's a lot of other incentives, and I'm not saying capitalism's bad or anything, but as
Okay.
far as just how bad it's gotten with big pharma and with our politicians and everything and different things in that nature, it got kind of depressing. And an example I gave with the economics homework I was doing was with car insurance, right? And how there's different laws that are enacted now that require it, right? So people, this is just straight up, people that have insurance of some kind or some kind of assurance that their loss will be mitigated are just bound to act more recklessly, to drive more recklessly, to not care as much for what could be lost because it can be replaced, right? And versus people that don't have insurance, they'll have to drive more carefully because that loss will hit them harder, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was using that example, and I just had it was easy to search up too some research for it. There was a paper that was written by someone I think I forget the school, but
Interesting.
I posted a Twitter thread about it, and there's a link there to the paper, but it talks about how since like the 90s and 80s there was like a big rise in legislation for it and insurance in general. So
Hmm.
it showed that proving or requiring it and other auto laws that require it has a negative overall effect on traffic fatalities. Despite
Interesting.
whatever good could come from it, right? People insured, whatever, it has an overall negative impact. And that not only affects, the poorer class people, and it was talking about there's two classes of people, right? The class that has the money, the introducing a law that requires insurance wouldn't affect these people because they were going to buy it anyway. They wanted to protect their assets and they had the funds to do so, so they were going to do it anyway. It wouldn't affect them. It affects the lower class people that maybe couldn't afford it and are now forced to
Yeah.
buy it. So it takes money from them for that, and it takes more money from them for not having it, right? With fines and whatnot if they get caught, right? Places all these social stigmas on it. And then
Mm.
yeah, they're covered what little they can get when if there is an accident, but now they are uh, tagged along with the group that has insurance, so now they will drive, less carefully. Whereas before, if
Mm.
they knew like this is the only car I got and I can't handle it, like
Mm.
they will be driving super careful, right? Someone in
No,
that
yeah, of course.
situation. So it's about incentives. People have the incentive to act in their best interest, and even unconscious incentives. You're not thinking I'm going to drive recklessly all the time, but just
Mhm.
naturally, you're not as worried about it,
Yeah.
so you're not
Yeah.
telling yourself to drive more careful. So that's just one example. And I wanted to get into a lot bigger thought of like, the pharmaceutical companies and the healthcare industry in general and how it's incentivized like a company instead of just healing people. It's more so talking about keeping patients as customers instead of, healing. And
Mm.
it's not profitable for a hospital or a pharmaceutical company to treat you effectively and quickly because they will be losing a customer. It is instead more profitable to give you small little doses that get you a little bit better so you keep coming back and keep having to buy and keep getting your new subscription new prescription. So it's really predatory and it's pretty awful. Um
Mm. Mm. Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. It's interesting because, well, first off, like, I feel like when it comes to like, especially the different schools of thought when it comes to politics and our ideologies, you have some people more on the left and more on the right, but I find that since I kind of came out more as a conservative back in like 2020 openly, I've noticed that most of there are more people that go into that category. I would say as the conspiracy theorists, whatever, more on the right. Like there's a lot of people that I associate with, and it's always about the government. It's always about all these different things that what's happening. The manipulation and even what you're talking about in regards to the incentives. And I think my primary concern is that when we are supposed to be following God, you know, we shouldn't be stressing over things like that. Like there's always going to be people that are going to try to exploit others, like it
yeah,
happened in the
common theme
Greco-Roman,
throughout history.
empire, yeah, 2000 years ago, like it's always happening. It's going to always happen and it will never stop. I mean, this is sort of that sinful nature we have. And yeah, I mean, if I created I don't know, a hand sanitizing company, I don't want to say any particular words that can get us flagged or anything like that. But let's say everything that's happening, in the world,
Yeah,
since 2020, um, yeah, this actually would benefit me and my company.
yeah,
This would benefit us if I make hand sanitizer. And yeah, I may actually decide to rack up the prices. Absolutely, absolutely, because now I'm going to be in, I could afford more things now. Now I can do more because now this is what's happening, and this is working to my benefit. This is working to my benefit. So absolutely, I don't want things to change. No, no. I mean, it would. I can get a better house and a nice yacht. Of course, I don't want this to stop. So no, I do see what it is that you're talking about. But I think ultimately, um, I think it's important to know that God does establish government. This is something addressed in like Romans 13. A lot of us like to go to, and there's other areas in the New Testament, specifically that God reminds us that He's the one that created the government. And the
yeah,
purpose is, of course, to coordinate, just a society and just to protect people and to punish, evildoers and things like that. And one of the reasons why I lean more on the right as a conservative is I do have an issue with the government, sticking its hand in like going beyond what it is that's required of them. There's a lot of things that they're kind of sticking their hands in that I feel like, government shouldn't be a part of what's happening with maybe marriage or maybe children in the womb and stuff like that. That has nothing, that's not their job to be a part of that. And so I have an issue with them overreaching in those other, you know, things that really has nothing to do with them. So I do understand that they have a specific role, but yeah, they're stretching their hand a little too further across that table, and they're going in everyone else's plates. That's sort of the issue I have. But in regards to that, I know that every single person, whether they're in our legislation, our executive branch, judicial branch, everyone's going to bow their knee and they're going to answer to God one day.
Yeah.
Every, everyone, and everyone on YouTube who's behind the scenes on YouTube, everyone in Google, everyone on Twitter, the teams behind it, everyone is going to answer to God one day. It's appointed for everyone to die once, and then comes the judgment. So it's not something that I feel like for those of us who are Christian, we should be stressing so much over. I think it's good to be aware of what's happening because I don't support ignorance. I don't think
Yeah.
that's like just walk down the street and stare at the sky and just everything will just work itself out. No, I think we should be aware of crooked companies that are saying, hey, yeah, we can make a profit this way, but hey, let's rack up the prices for this way. I think, and that's one of the reasons why I enjoy capitalism and the free market is we can use our dollars to say, you know what, we don't like that, so we're going to take our money and pull it away. We're going to put it over here. Like that's
Yeah.
what I love about the free market is we can respond to this company and say, hey, you do that, but we're not going to give you business. We're going to go over here, or we'll figure out something natural or whatever else, and leave you alone. So this is something I love about our society when it comes to the capitalistic system. It's like the best form of you know when it comes to just economics, when it comes
Like a
to the way that
balancing
we can approach.
system.
Oh, it's perfect. It's perfect.
I
I
agree. It
love it.
puts the power in like the people's hands as far as like buying power, spending power, but those systems don't work when the government again overreaches and like bails out
Oh yeah,
different structures that are
yeah,
destined
yeah,
to
yeah.
fail or doesn't deregulate and destroy, break up monopolies. We have giant tech monopolies right now, and those are
Yes,
only
we do.
getting stronger and more prevalent. They're influencing politics. It's a cesspool of like nonsense, and it feels really bleak, you know. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
don't want to give
Go
in
ahead.
to the temptation of like, oh, right now we're living in such a complex time and like it's so just because it's the time we're living in, right? I haven't,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm sure other people thought the same way about other times that they've lived in. There's a lot of
mhm.
history to go around. There's something always happening.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Of course.
um but as far as just like it all kind of seems I get very pessimistic about it when I just learn more about it and how the structures aren't really holding up to what they should be doing, and it just makes me want to just consolidate and just block all that out and focus on me and my family,
Yeah,
every
yeah, yeah,
day, and
yeah,
that's
yeah,
that's that's
yeah.
healthy, I think. If when either side, whatever side you're on, the past couple of political elections for president, like there was outcry and fallout on both sides, like
Mm,
after each
mm.
one. And I'm just thinking the entire time, like, if you're, like, how are you so, like, distraught about over this decision that has almost nothing to do with you in a lot of cases, right? If your day to day is affected by the president choice himself, like, what is going on wrong in your life? What can you improve in your life where you're not as reliant on that? That's not a direct
I
effect to
agree.
you, right?
I agree.
Because
I agree.
the good thing about America is it gives us the freedom to have some space, where if you can create a life for yourself and you can have a lot of the freedoms that you enjoy, you don't have to focus and every day on the rat race and the news and keep up to date with it all the time. The 24/7 news cycle is awful.
It is. It is. And I feel like, especially like I'm gonna say, maybe it was last year, but I was talking to a relative of mine, an aunt, and she was kind of worked up about the virus and everything that's happening, and I asked her, well, what are you learning? What news sources are you listening to? She said, well, I'm listening to CNN every day, and I said, oh, I mean, I just knew that just for her revealing that, I just said, "Oh, okay." Like I know where and what to what degree she's been affected
Yeah.
just by that. Because, they had the death ticker in 2020 of all these people passing away. Like it was always, it was like so strange how that was something that was happening. With this virus, like it was a death ticker. It's like always in the I don't know if it was at the bottom of the screen, but it was like this, and I'm thinking like never in history have we ever had something strange like that happening. Like
Yeah.
could you imagine? Like, could you imagine if we kept up with people who die in cars, in car accidents, or like nobody would be getting in cars. Like this is some type of psychological weird, strange practice to, but yeah, I just
Like
think it's
fear
important.
tactic.
I agree. You said what?
Fear tactic.
Yeah, yeah, but I agree with what you're saying. I think that it's important as Americans, as Christians, as people, that yeah, I mean, we should be living lives that regardless of who's in the White House, we have to understand like we still are responsible for the lives that we have and our
Yeah.
families and ourselves, and yeah, we have to make things work regardless of whether they're Republican or Democrat,
Yeah.
and yeah, yeah, I will say just kind of going back into the whole, uh, what you were saying in regards to just the authority that a lot of the people behind the tech world has. Like I have to say, like when President Trump was removed indefinitely from like all these social media platforms,
Oh
like
yeah.
unanimous, to me, I just thought, wow, this is like frightening. This is frightening
It's
because
exile. Like
if there's
from the
any
public
place in the world
discourse.
that we should have free speech and this United States Constitution, and I'm just thinking to myself like this is frightening. This is frightening, and I mean thank the Lord there's other elements where I can listen to and other places where they don't think like these other groups, so they don't censor him. But yeah, I thought it was really sad and very frightening that because I'm thinking if you can remove, unanimously these different groups work together to remove somebody, then they can remove any of us. Yeah, I mean, could you imagine like a world where I don't know, let's say there's a passion that you develop over time, and you're speaking to people, and people are listening to you, and they want to hear what you have to say, and yeah, these groups decide, well, you know what, Tim is actually he's actually demonstrating that he's a leader. He's speaking independently. He's going after his own facts, and we can't influence him. Well, he's a danger. He's a danger now. We gotta get rid of him. So at least So to me, it was very frightening for that to happen. So, um, I mean, I don't think we should lose heart and things like that. But yeah, I think it's good to know that what's happening and what's aware and be aware of what's happening and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I do believe the government has its role, but yeah, the sinful nature of human beings, we do
Any
that overreach.
system's gonna kind of get corrupt, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, and yeah, and it's sad, but yeah, that's what's happening with the nature we have.
Before we get off of like conspiracy theories and stuff, I remember,
Okay.
because it's like super interesting some of that stuff, and I remember like we would have morning workouts for football at like 6 a.m. like spring conditioning. It's gonna be an awful workout, like not awful, but it's good,
Okay.
good, but it's gonna just like it's gonna suck, right?
Yeah.
You're there for a couple hours, you have to wake up at like 5:30, and I would sometimes like just stay up until like 3 or so, just out of like angst and nervousness. And then I remember one time, instead of getting some good sleep that probably would have helped me in the workout, I was up at like 3:30 a.m. figuring out whether or not the moon landing was faked. Like,
Oh,
I was like, I know I need some sleep, but did we go to the moon? Like, I was just watching different like random stuff on YouTube and just go, like a YouTube a rabbit hole where I just go down the
yeah, yeah,
next recommended. I probably started on some gaming thing and ended up, did we go to the moon? No, like, and so, yeah,
yeah.
that's,
It's very interesting, Tim, because I noticed that when and maybe it was God just really using me to communicate with people, but I noticed that when I started becoming more open about my faith and confidently sharing, whether I was in a public setting or on social media or doing videos or whatever, I started attracting different types of people, not only Christians, but people who had other beliefs, that were.
yeah,
And so, like, I remember just talking to a guy. I was invited to his home with his girlfriend, and we were talking, and then he, assured me that, Earth is not a sphere; it's actually flat. That NASA has manipulated the
the data,
photos to
yeah,
give the appearance, and I, I just, I didn't even know how to even respond to something like that. But and I can go on and on with the type of things that I've heard from different types of groups and people, but it's fascinating because I almost felt like God just purposefully put me, in the lives of these people so I can kind of,
Speak some
and with
truth.
the, oh yeah, yeah, but it was just very intriguing because I think I heard about the community of people, the flat earthers,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
to meet one, very different experience, very different,
I'm
very different,
sure. I bet. Oh
very
man.
different experience, very different. It's like, wow, okay, all right, there we go.
Wow.